Hello, tiny friends. Welcome back to Tiny Keyhole Minis. I'm Jolene, and today I'm going to start this video off with taking one last look at this back room as a bedroom before I actually switch it over to the sewing room. I really do love this room, and I love it as a bedroom. Originally, I intended it to be a bedroom, but when the renovations were finished, it looked so much like a back room, and in my mind, I just feel like that's where the sewing room needed to be. So, although I am so in love with it as a bedroom, it is going to be replaced. But no worries, tiny friends. I will definitely be renovating the other room and making it look just as old and beautiful as this room. So you will get to see all these miniature pieces once again in their final room on the other side of the house. So here it is one last time. And now we can get to today's project with beginning the sewing room. Okay, beginning this project with a Chrysnbon sewing kit. I love Chrysnbon kits so much, but this one did not come with the measuring tape or the sewing pattern, which I was a little disappointed because I was looking forward to seeing those pieces. So I'll have to make my own unless the ones on the instructions are what you're supposed to cut out, but I really don't think so because Chrysnbon accessories are usually a little better in quality. But my daughter gave me this sewing machine as well, and I'll be revamping this while I'm working on all the sewing stuff. I'm not sure if this is going to go in the room, if both of them are, or if just one, depending on how much I can fit. Also, I'll be using Tester's non-toxic liquid cement glue um, for the Chrysnbon kit. I do have a chair that is all broken up that I will be putting together and using it in the room. It used to look like this, and I got it in a Coca-Cola lot, but I was more interested in the vintage Coca-Cola machine that came. Although these chairs are super cute, I stripped all that paint off, and I'm pretty sure I weakened the plastic because I used acetone. The the stuff is so thick, and I'm pretty sure it was coated with Mod Podge, which I would definitely not recommend, especially on these Chrysnbon pieces, tiny friends. Um, you can ruin your piece that way because Mod Podge doesn't sit well with higher temperatures. Um, Definitely don't do that. But the leg did break in storage, but it's a clean fit, and I'm going to put it all together while I have the tester's glue out, and I'll be repainting this chair. All I had was acetone. So I used the acetone. I didn't have any more of the paint thinner because I used it all to clean my brushes. Tester's paint is enamel, so you need some sort of paint thinner to clean your brushes with. And that went pretty fast. You don't get very much in a small little bottle. But I do plan on using this in the sewing room. For the tester's glue, it's made specifically for this type of plastic and plastic models. It smells a little like oranges, um, but it is a fast gripper. But it will give you some time to place your pieces, and then it grips really quickly and it holds really well. So I do love using this glue on my kits. Today I'm going to begin with the dress form. I just thought it was a great warm-up to start this kit off since there's only a few pieces in it. And I'm going to try to get it to look more realistic. I'm going to be adding some canvas to it and show you how you can add any type of fabric to your dress form as well. I have this giant canvas sack cover that came with our love sack, and I thought for sure I am using this for my projects. So I cut a piece out and I'm going to attach it to the dress form, and you can use any type of fabric you'd like in the same type of way. So I'm going to try and get this dress form to look a bit more realistic, to be more fitting with all the rest of the miniatures in the house. And I am speeding this video up on 2 times, double time, for time's sake. Most of my videos from this point on will be a lot shorter than the doll videos, because I am back in project mode. So I cut a piece out, and I am going to be using my fabric tack for this, which worked very, very well. So it was fast drying, it was fast gripping, and I think it worked a lot better than tacky glue would. You just want to carefully detach your pieces from the frame. And if you have any of these little knobs, these little pieces sticking out, you can just file them down. But you want to make sure that you do not file your little pieces that actually will be fitting inside the corresponding parts. So be careful of that, because you definitely need those to go inside the holes on the opposite part. But I just took a nail file and began to file. It doesn't take very long. And I also filed the edge where the glue was going to go, just to give it a better grip and a better hold. So it did not take long. It was very simple. You don't need a lot of filing. So very lightly and very little bit will do, because this stuff files pretty good. Save the parts that they come off of, because you could use those as pipes or other parts in your miniatures. I don't know why I filed the bottom. I thought those pieces went together as well, but they didn't. So this is the first piece. I've already jumped ahead to do that, and you can see how it looks. And then I'm just going back in to add a little bit of glue in the spots or the areas that didn't attach. So it's pretty simple. I'm just making sure that it still fits. Don't worry about the sides. I'll be adding a seam. I cut this one a little bit too close, so if you're doing this, just be careful of your cuts when we get to that part. But I began by tracing the shape out on the canvas, which I made extra larger, and then just cut off the excess pieces, because there was really no way to measure this. I just needed enough to wrap around all the curves and the sides, because you can always cut off all the additional excess fabric. So just make sure you have your piece plenty big enough. And then I cut that out. The only part that I hemmed is the bottom part. So I'm just making a very simple seam along the bottom with the fabric tack. And I'm using fabric tack for the seam because it's a thicker fabric, and the fabric tack held it really quickly and really well. But tacky glue does work for this as well. I'll be using tacky glue for the seams to go along the side of the dress form. And then I gave it a run with my clover iron, just to fuse that down and flatten it down more. I'm going to dry fit it, which happens very often when you're creating your miniatures. You definitely want to do a lot of dry fitting. And then I'm going to apply some fabric tack right along the bottom, and I'm going to start in small sections. So I'm just doing a little bit of the bottom. I am putting a fairly good amount on, and I'm going to take my toothpick and I'm just smoothing it up a little bit. And then I'm laying this down, and I'm going right in that groove of the dress form to get that detail as well. And then I'm just wrapping it around nice and tight, smoothing it down. And since canvas is kind of, you can stretch it a little, I'm pulling it nice and tight, and I'm stretching it as I'm smoothing it down and laying it down. Then I'm going to take my scissors and cut some notches where the curves are. Carefully do this if you want to try this. I'm only going up to the frame of the dress form. I'm not going past that. And then I'm just going to do this all over again with the midsection, smoothing it up a little, and then laying down that fabric and pressing it down while I'm pulling it tightly to the sides to avoid any wrinkles or creases or air bubbles underneath that fabric. I'm making a couple more notches around the shoulders at an angle and around the neck area. And this will help these parts lay down nice and smooth. And then I'll begin with my glue and do the same thing all the way up until it's completely covered. And you can pull the fabric back when applying your glue. You just fold that fabric right back down to where your previous glued area is, and then go ahead and apply your glue on the area that you're working on. I do want to say, if you're using a thinner fabric, you probably don't want to use as much fabric tack as I'm using. But again, this is a thicker fabric. So just keep that in mind as well, because the thinner the fabric is, the more that this glue is going to seep through. And you definitely don't want that if you're working with a thinner fabric. But I am just smoothing this down, pulling and stretching the sides, getting out all the air bubbles and making sure that it's nice and flat and smooth around the form. And I'm going in those grooves so that those details can show as well. So just take your time while you're doing this. This is what it looks like. I'm going to set it aside to dry, and then I'll come back and begin to trim off the excess. So the first trimming, I'm just going as close as I can, and then I'll come back with a second round and get nice and close and more of a clean cut edge around the form frame. Now this project didn't take long at all. I knew that it was going to be a quick little ditty and a great way to get back into the groove of making miniatures again, but just keep in mind that the footage is sped up for the sake of the video. This is what it looks like, and now I'm just going in for a closer cut with my curved scissors, and I'm making sure that the fabric isn't covering the edge where the glue is going to sit. So be aware of that if you're trying this. And now I'm just going to do a dry fit to make sure it fits properly still, and it does. So now I can proceed with painting. Okay, so I'm going to begin with the bottom of the stand and the wheels. And here I'm just showing you a reminder to keep this piece, keep all your pieces and parts, tiny friends, because they do come in handy for other miniature ideas. So beginning with the wheels and the legs of the stand, I'm going to use my Testors silver chrome enamel paint, and I'm going to begin with the caster wheels. Now here in this frame you see that I have only painted the silver arm pieces on the wheels, but later on I go back and I decided that the wheels look better all silver. So I did go back and paint the wheels silver, and then the little arms I painted black. Okay, I'm taking my little sponge and I'm dabbing off as much of the paint as I possibly can. And I'm just going to apply it to where the light is shining on the arms, just to give it a little bit of a wear and tear and some coloring. And this is what it looks like. Now this part, I'm doing the same thing with the pole, but I did paint the bigger end because I thought I was going to be able to use that at the bottom of the base. I just liked it better. It gave it more detail. It really didn't specify in the directions which way the bar went. And I found out later that the bigger piece actually goes inside the frame and gives it more support. So when I went to attach it, the smaller end didn't give it any support at all. So if you plan on putting this kit together and you couldn't tell the difference either, now you know that the bigger end of the pole goes inside the dress form frame for more support. So I'm just painting up the top part, and I did the same thing with the sponge technique around the cage part of the dress form. I'm gluing in the smaller piece to the stand, and I really did like how the bigger end looked attached to the feet. It did give it more detail, but again, it didn't work out, so no worries. The directions really weren't specific on that. So I'm going in with the glue right around the edge, and I also put a little bit of that glue in the holes where the two little knobs go into. And then I'm just putting it together, and I'm holding it into place while it takes a hold so that it's nice and straight and it's not tilting in any direction. And you just gotta hold it a little bit if you're using the tester's glue, but it does not take long at all before it grips. So just a few seconds, about a minute or two, and then your piece is nice and supported and tight and glued together. So going in for the seams for the siding, I'm using my tacky glue. Now the reason why I'm using my tacky glue for this part is because for one, I have that needle nozzle, and for two, I need these seams to be super small. So I'm actually going to roll them kind of like a cord. I don't really know if there's seams on a dress form that has fabric on it, but because these parts were fitted together and there was no way that I could add a hem around the cut piece of the fabric, there was just no way to actually measure the piece to fit it properly like when you're making clothing. And I needed a thinner glue for this part, so the fabric tack was way too thick for this. Um, but the tacky glue does work really well on the fabric itself. So I'm just rolling it pretty tight and very small, as small as I can get it. And I don't roll it around too much, just enough to make it look like a little piece of string. And I was really surprised how well this worked because the canvas is a thicker fabric, but it did work pretty well. It was very easy to just roll this around. This is what it looks like. And now I'm going to trim it down and attach it to the dress form. And I'm using fabric tack for this. And I'm just running it right along where that seam is, where the two pieces meet. I'm just making some adjustments here, and then I'm going to run my clover iron right over that seam to fuse it and flatten it down just a little bit so it's not so bulky. And then I can trim off that excess piece. This is what it's looking like. Now for the top part, I've taken a little bit of aluminum foil and folded it up into a strip and a decorative jump ring, and I have washed them with rubbing alcohol and black acrylic paint. Once that's dried, I'm able to apply it. For the aluminum foil, I just folded it over on itself a few times to make it a little more workable, a little thicker, and just a little strip. I'm adding fabric tack to attach the foil to the top of the neck part, using a toothpick to smooth it down, and then I'm able to attach the strip right around the neck part to make it look like a metal ring or bracket of some sort. Once I get the foil strip on, I can trim it down, close it up, and this is what it's looking like. I do like the way it looks as is, but it does feel a little unfinished. So I'm adding the jump ring right on top with my Aleene's Jewelry and Metal Glue just to seal that top part up so you don't see where they connect. That is it for today's project, tiny friends. I hope you have enjoyed this video. I did go back in with some chalk pastels to discolor that canvas a little bit, and you can see what it looks like up close. I'll give you a close-up of the whole piece. I do have some ideas in mind to accessorize this dress form. So when I get to making some of the accessories for the sewing room, I'll be making um, the ideas that I have to put into place for the dress form. You can see how the plastic now looks like aged metal, and it has a little bit of texture to it, looking like it's a little bit worn down. And the caster wheels are now silver with the black arm. When I come back, I'll be doing the sewing tables and showing how I can make the plastic sewing table look like real wood with antique wax. And I know some of you have been waiting to see that. That has been announced long ago, and I'm finally getting to that part. So, Shira, I know you have been waiting for that, so stay tuned. That is coming up next for you. So this is it You can do this whether you have a Chrysnbon dress form or whether or not your dress form is already put together. You can add some fabric to the top of that, giving it a more realistic look. So let me know what you thought in the comments below. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for subscribing. I appreciate it so much. And until the next time, tiny friends, you all have a lovely day, and I will see you all on the mini side. Bye-bye.